Many thanks, Ekene Undule, for that background report. Here with us in the studios to discuss matters arising from these incessant attacks on various communities. Let's welcome distinguished Senator Dickett Blank, is a senator representing the Plateau Central Senatorial District. Senator Blank, we're glad to have you, but of course not too glad to be discussing this kind of subject matter.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I must thank NTA for their desire that we will live in peace on the Plateau and Nigeria at large.
Also here with us in the studios is a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, security risk management expert, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Dr. Adamu, we're glad to have you.
My pleasure, Dr. Honorable Kingsley.
All right. Well, he deserves it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also joining us, but this time it will be via Zoom, all the way from Freetown, is Wilson Inaligo. Mr. Inaligo is a retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, AIG. I just wish we could see your face. We could lighten up your face. It's a bit dark. We can't make out your face at all. We want to thank you for joining us, Mr. Inaligo.
Thank you. I'll try to adjust so that you can see my face clearly. Thank you.
All right. AIG Inaligo, thank you once again for being with us. The other day when we're discussing security and safety of guests in hotels, you also joined us from Freetown, and the lighting on your face was much better. We hope you can reenact that so that this silhouette effect is eliminated. So we'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. Now, here in the studios, let's first turn our attention to distinguished Senator Dickett Blank. Senator Dickett Blank, how we read reports of the attacks, say, in Plateau. How bad is the situation?
Well, the situation on the Plateau is not good. It's sad, it's devastating, and very unfortunate. Particularly that you all know that this crisis have stayed for some time on the Plateau. But for the central zone, it's just coming into the central part of Plateau, particularly Mangu Local Government Council, local government area. Mangu Local Government area is the third largest in terms of population, third largest local government on the Plateau. And Mangu Local Government also is one of the most business-oriented local government council apart from Jos. And the people of Mangu have been very accommodative for quite some time. That local government have never witnessed crisis at all. This is the first time. But the magnitude that this crisis in Mangu local government is unprecedented. So it's worrisome. And I feel it's an issue that should attract the attention of the people of Plateau and the attention of Nigerians, including NTA, because we need to find a solution to it, and we need to nip it from the bud. And I feel that if we leave it alone to only the people of Plateau and Mangu alone, we will not really have a solution to it. It's devastating, very unfortunate, and it has to come to an end.
Distinguished Senator, it's saddening. But from what you have just told us, I just took note of certain things, because I was going to ask you why Mangu, if you know why Mangu is the target, but you've just said that this is the first time. But of course, the magnitude, it's not something, yes, it's huge. Mangu has large population, it's business oriented, it's accommodating. These are, qualities that should attract development and peaceful coexistence and all that. But can you hazard any reason why, Mangu has been in the news for the bad reasons now?
For me, I feel sometimes we're not fast holistically on approaching an issue. The problem in Mangu probably started from a very small conflict. And when conflict starts, and we pay attention to nip it from the bud, rather than allowing it stay and you have reprisal returns. By the time you allow reprisal returns coming in, it becomes very difficult to bring it to an end. But honestly, I must sincerely commend the stakeholders, the structures in Mangu local government, because we're lucky, as I told you, that Mangu local government council is a local government council with people of high potential. It's one of the most educated local government on the plateau, where you have professors, very enlightened society. The president of the National Council of Mangu is a former retired federal permanent secretary. You could imagine someone who has been honored with a CON. Now,
I'm sorry to interject. Yeah. If you have this quality of people, I'm just wondering why you are commending them, and they were not able to nip in the bud something that started small.
Yeah, I'm coming. The traditional ruler did all he could. The initial stage, he was able to bring in the various faction groups together for a discussion. What I feel that it is always beyond their strength is when a conflict comes in and it comes with identity. Sometimes it becomes very difficult for someone to put a stop to it. Identity, what do I mean? Criminalities should be seen from a criminal point of view. But when criminalities committed, criminal act committed, is covered with an identity, it gets support. Take for instance, there's a conflict between a Yoruba man and maybe an Igbo man. Instead of looking directly at the conflict on the two, you want to believe that it's an issue between Yoruba and Igbo. The moment another Igbo hears that the Yoruba are fighting Igbos, there can be a reflex act. And when you see an Igbo man, when a Yoruba man sees an Igbo man, he is angry. And when an Igbo man sees a Yoruba man, he is angry. Not minding what happened, not minding what was the issue. So for me, criminality with identity sometimes finds favor, even before the criminal finds favor, because the identity he belongs to tend to support and feels that he should be protected. But when a criminal act happens, it should be looked from a point of a criminal act and dealt with at that level. But when you want to think that this is our own and that we must protect our own and that this one injured my own, we need to go for a retaliation, and you go for another one retaliate, it expands. And that's why when the issue came in, I like us discussing this issue from a very brotherly point of view. When we begin to put names, put titles to it, we may not have a solution.
What was the fundamental issue that arose that wasn't handled properly?
I wouldn't say it wasn't handled properly, but I would want to say Nigerians are brothers and sisters. If we are patriotic enough to look at ourselves as Nigerians, and whenever an issue arises between us, there should be that brotherly look in the face of each, and then you begin to find out who is wrong. It helps. So I'm saying so. You know, initially, I said it's a conflict between a Fulani boy and a Moravul boy. They had a conflict. And of course, you know, we have limited natural resources. We have competing demands. And in such we are bound to offend each other. And when it comes in as it used to be, you have a way of accepting sorry and this at the beginning. You can find solution. But if there's a conflict between a community or a tribe, another tribe, and we look at it from a tribal point of view, it can escalate.
All right, distinguished Senator Plank, thank you very much there for the perspective that you have provided. We will, of course, interrogate other peace building measures that may have been kicked in. Let's bring in now Dr. Kabir Adamu. Dr. Adamu, when we were introducing to this program, we did say that we're looking at recurrent attacks on various communities in different parts of the country, southwest, all the 6 geopolitical zones, none is spared. Benue, we don't have any guests immediately from Benue who is here with us in the studios. Northwest, northeast, southeast, of course, with the so-called unknown gunmen and IPOB. So I would like you to give our viewers a helicopter view, as it were, of these recurrent attacks on criminalities and the numbers of fatalities that are just escalating. They are in their hundreds. These are human beings, by the way. Yes.
It's very sad that we're having to have this conversation, but that's the reality that we found ourselves in the country. Anyone who is interested in that helicopter view should go to my website. I run a consultancy firm. It's called Beacon Consulting. We have a dashboard, and that dashboard gives a representation of the 774 local governments. If you click on the local government you're interested in, you can get a sense of what is happening. If you want the state view, you get a sense. Now, having said that, if for the purpose of this conversation, let's use the 6 geopolitical zones. There is a common thread that links all these 6 geopolitical zones when we're speaking security. It is the activities of non-state armed groups. And in simple definition, these are groups who are, of course, not in any way statutory, formed, who have acquired weaponry and who have shown the capacity to to use those weaponries. They include the terrorist groups in the northeast, such as the Jamaat al-Ahl Sunnah al-Dawati wal Jihad, otherwise called Boko Haram, or the Islamic State in West Africa province, or the third one called Ansaru. You can move that to the parts of North Central and Northwest, because in recent years we've seen a movement, including in places like Kogi and to an extent reaching as far as Ondo. If you go to the southeast, it is the activities of a separatist group that we all call Indigenous People of Biafra. Recently, it launched an armed wing called the Eastern Security Network. And if we go by extension, a statement by a senator previously, he said that group has now factionalized into 13 different factions, and that they are all operational within the 5 states of the southeast. If you move to the southwest, what you find there are mainly criminal groups, and to an extent in places like Ondo, militant groups that are interested in oil theft and some other community-related violence. Now, for the south, it is militancy and to an extent gang violence. In the northwest, north central, and to an extent northeast, you also find the activities of gunmen that we all call bandits. They fall under that general group, non-state armed groups. So that is the common feature. Persons who have organized themselves and challenging the supremacy of the use of force by the state, and sadly, quite successfully. In June, we release monthly reports, and that report is a compilation of the incidents that would have occurred within a period. 853 Nigerians were killed within the month of June, and that is worrisome. In the first 6 months of the year, about 4,000 plus Nigerians have already been killed. So sadly, the trajectory that we've been seeing over the last few years is likely to repeat itself, where at least between 8,000 to 10,000 Nigerians are killed yearly. Some positive developments with the new administration. There is a new government in place. It has appointed some new leadership within the security structure, and it has made some pronouncements that are quite encouraging. Just yesterday there was a declaration of state of emergency on food security with measures listed. Quite encouraging. The president has spoken about the need to take back our country. He's talked about collaboration within the security sector. So quite encouraging. But to summarize all of this and to also buttress the point made by the distinguished senator, there are about 3 or 4 things that we need to look at when it comes to insecurity in Nigeria. Number 1 is the failure of our traditional justice or peace resolution mechanism. Just like he has, buttressed. A small issue started. In the past, our traditional peace or mediation mechanisms would have resolved it. Sadly, today that is not happening. Number 2 is the ineffective and inefficient criminal justice system. Because where that traditional justice system fails, the criminal justice system, our law enforcement agents should have arrested the criminals irrespective of their identity and then of course prosecuted them. Third one is our security forces, sadly, that are preventing the kind of, failing to prevent the kind of carnage. What the Senator didn't mention is that this thing started in May. And when it started, is a small issue. Today, when we look back, between 300 and 400 persons have been killed from that single issue. If I'm right, about 50 villages have been destroyed as a result of a small issue between 2 persons of different identity that is resource-based. So, May to July, efforts have been made, curfews have been declared, but all of these 3 things that I've mentioned, from the traditional to the criminal justice system to our law enforcement, they failed to prevent this killing. And what is behind the killing? Armed ethnic militias from the 2 sides, sadly. So they are not ghosts. If we are serious about the 3 components that I've mentioned, by now we've been able to address them. And that is Mangu. It's the same thing that is happening in Benue, slightly different.
Yes, you said something. You identified the trigger, resource-based. I mean, it's something that you could handle. Then you said something that those who are supposed to, check it, to address the issue, failed. Now the question will be, why? What happened? Why did they not, why did they fail?
It would be unfair to place that responsibility as an example on our traditional rulers. Over time, we have whittled down their power because they are the ones who were responsible for the traditional justice system. In the past, they know what to do, they know the individuals to call that are representatives of those identity, and then a solution will be found. We've whittled down their power to a point where they are slightly ineffective. Now that's why I brought in the second element, which is the criminal justice system. In all locations, irrespective of what part of the country, there are institutions. The criminal justice system comprises 3 things. If I remember well, the law enforcement component that is supposed to arrest the offender, present him before a competent court of jurisdiction, and try that person, and then of course the custodial centers that will hold up that person. Now sadly, all of these 3 have failed in arresting this issue. And the distinguished can tell us who has been arrested, who has been prosecuted. Since May, when this issue started, between 300 to 400 persons have been killed. And not, as far as I know, not 1 person has been prosecuted. Maybe arrests have been made, but the prosecution hasn't taken place.
You said the powers of the traditional rulers have been whittled. By whom?
By the state, as it were. And again, this is a public forum, so we have to be mindful of what we say. We're not blaming a particular.
Yes, because we really want to get to the roots. We want to know because, like you said, it's a resource base. It's between 2 brothers, over a particular thing, which could have been resolved.
Land. We don't need to run away from it. It's about land.
Which could have been resolved at that level without even escalating, the models.
Well, over time, successive governments in Nigeria, sadly, whether unknowingly or unknowingly, have whittled down that role of the traditional leaders within our country. And frankly, we can trace it back to this 4th Republic, even though it extends a little bit longer than that. So I'm hoping, distinguished from the Parliament, I'm hoping the 10th Assembly will look at that issue. One of the things that is gladdening my heart is that this administration is looking at security holistically. I've sat down here severally and I've talked about the need to approach security from a different lens, not necessarily the kinetic lens. So I'm quite excited about some of the policy statements coming out of this new administration, and I'm hoping that the parliament will look at this particular issue. If we need to strengthen that role. If we don't strengthen it, then we also need to make the criminal justice system effective, efficient and effective. We can't have both not functional.
No.
Dr. Kabir Adamu, before I move to AIG in Alego, you earlier indicated that you were going to list 4 factors in the recurrent crisis that we're having, but you already listed 3. I was wondering if there's a 4th one, or you want to keep that
the communities,
in reserve. Yes.
The communities. Distinguished spoke about the role of the communities. When identity comes in, it creates a huge challenge. Now, again, I'm mindful that this is a public forum, but we need to speak about distance. Mangu is where the governor comes from. It was peaceful. May, after the elections, before inauguration, a conflagration started happening in Mangu. We have to ask ourselves why. Some rhetorics came out during the mobilization for voting for election that were identity-based, what we all call negative mobilization, from both sides. And sadly, it is one of the issues happening in Mangu is a consequence of that. Like I say, I think I've said it here before, sometimes politicians, they wittingly or unwittingly use negative mobilization, and then they have to now spend 2 years of their leadership to address the consequence of what has happened. And sadly, this is an example. Now, I'm not placing blame on any particular politician, but it's the reality.
Okay. Dr. Kabir Adamu, thanks a lot. Of course, you're still here with us in the studio, so we'll get back to you. AIG Wilson Inalego, if we can see you on the screen, and well, your appearance is better. I say you're making a lot of effort to be visible to our viewers. Let's have your take on what is happening, the bloodletting in different communities, and the wanton destruction of property and means of livelihood across the country. Why are we overwhelmed?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I wouldn't say that we are overwhelmed, but the situation we have is very, very troubling. And I say that for a number of reasons. We have ongoing attacks in Benue, Nasarawa, now Mangu, a once peaceful community, very prosperous, a lot of grains produced in that area and all that everybody is now fighting. But it calls for a kind of self-retrospection by the various security agencies. Now that we have new guys on board handling the security agencies, there is something that has been missing. First of all, we've got to rebuild the confidence of the public in the law enforcement agencies and the administration of justice. People should be reassured that if somebody commits a crime, he will be arrested, investigated, and prosecuted successfully, and then the right sanction is imposed. But this can only occur if we have collaboration and coordination. Because if we don't have that, have all the security agencies coming together to fight this monster, ethnic attacks, banditry, kidnapping, and all sorts of things. Once people know that when they commit this offense, they can go scot-free, you are going to have problem. And the way to go about it, the challenge is not just that of resources for all personnel, human and material resources, but I think the absence of effective collaboration and coordination. coordination among the security agencies, collaboration with the community, active community engagement, and then begin to identify those red flags, those early warning systems, and having in place a robust response mechanism. Like the situation of Mango, 2 young people, Bagabul and the Fulani boy, having an issue, and it escalated. So once people know that situations like this have occurred in other places, for example, in Tafa, Balewa, Bauchi State, and all others. So what do you then do? You begin to identify those signs, and you can either employ mediation, or you can employ other early warning mechanisms, not just response, not just kinetic, not just response by security agencies. If you are not going to do that, and every community is setting up vigilante, every state government is setting up different forces, volunteer force, Ebibagu, and all that. Now, even these ones they set up in the states, what kind of coordination do they have with the official security agencies? I mean, the traditional security agencies like the police, the military, the civil defense, the DSS, and all that. If you are not going to do that, if you like, provide all the mechanism, all the resources you think you have. And I think that is an agenda, especially for the National Security Advisor, to begin to look at these things, that how coordinated. The states have their own responsibility. The local government have their own responsibility. But the overall responsibility rests with the federal government. The federal government has more resources. They have constitutional backing. The police force is a strength out police force. But what everybody must do, and I think the NSA, even the president, must insist that we've got to strengthen the structure of coordination among the security agencies. Because I had cause to travel to Ondo State, and where Amotekun is very active in the Southwest. And I asked the police commissioner, he said, well, we don't have vehicles. The governor only buys vehicles for Amotekun. Therefore, there is already a kind of silent disagreement among this. If you are not having that, you are not ever going to succeed. So we begin to identify these early warning signs and deal with them and have mechanisms in place. And that's where the traditional rulers come in. That's where the political leaders at the grassroots come in. Early intervention before they escalate. And when you are not able to deal with it, there should be mechanism in place to be able to deal with them. And it is important that it is not even too much out of place for the government to set up a small committee to look at all the commissions of inquiry that have been set up to address some of these communal issues that have been coming up, and look at the recommendations made. And I think it's a good place to start. It is not too much for the NSA to have coordinators in the 6 geopolitical zones. What do they do? Are the local government security committee meetings taking place? Are the state government security committee meetings taking place? When they take place, what happens to the minutes generated in those meetings? At the ward level, at the emirate level, what takes place there in terms of discussing security? It is when you begin to have, you begin to coalesce all this, you begin to identify. Then the state government, the governor, being the chief security officer, when he has his facts, is able to confront the commissioner of police. He's able to confront the DSS, the civil defense, because I will not give you resources unless I see that we are working together. That coordination mechanism, the NSA can take a lead. The SAS security in the states can become outlets for the NSA, so that, because right now that is not occurring, and you can talk all the grammar, all the factors, identifying early warning, responding, coordination among the security agencies, engagement with the community. When those signs come, then identify critical stakeholders. When you identify these critical stakeholders, how do you engage them? This is what is going to bring insecurity down. It is not by kinetic. You can you can shoot all the gun, but when you don't know who the criminal is, because this is asymmetrical warfare. So it's just about the people, and the political leaders must be sincere in dealing with the issues of security, because this involves human life. The figures that are being rolled out, they are not just figures, 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. They are human beings that have been needlessly killed. But we as a country must come together. The community must support the security agencies, but the security agencies must come together and reassure the public that they are up to speed, up to task. And when you do that, even without so much going on, all this is happening in communities, to local government, to state, and to the national level, you are going to see insecurity drop. The issues that are there, issues of land, issues of grazing, issues of farmers and herders, these are issues that can be discussed if we are truthful, if we are honest, if we are transparent, because nobody wants trouble. But
AIG Wilson Enadego, would like to thank you. We just hope that your visuals are a bit more steady, but we thank you. I want to still remain with you. They say action begets reaction, and it would appear, that those who are supposed to, act even before, conflicts like this escalate, either just sit back, fold their arms, or are complacent, and so don't act. You talk about the need for building, public confidence in the security force, in the security agencies, and I'm wondering, what about all the early warning, trainings, that some of these security agencies are made to go through? They're supposed to have a nose, for threats, even before they escalate, even before they happen, and then take action. But that is not happening. I can't really imagine how 50 houses, 50 or more, I just burned down, and nobody is taking action. Nothing happens. And we have security agencies, we have police posts, we have commands in those communities. So what happened? Why are the security agencies not also coalescing those early warning trainings that they have been put through, that they go through, to help us address some of these situations before they escalate?
When you are talking about early warning, the response are in various forms, and I talked about that. That mediation is one of the ways of responding, and that is why I talked about identifying critical stakeholders. But the point we've got to understand is that the resources available are limited, and that is why I alluded to the fact that when you bring them together, you achieve more. Because when you go to a police force and you have 3 police officers there, they are not able to deal with those situations. But when the early warning comes, it is processed. And so the response by intelligence agencies, the response by security agencies is a critical element in all of this. And why am I saying that? If you have intelligence or information from a source, for example, that these activities are taking place, we're having issues, because they never start one day. Somebody goes to somebody's farm, destroys the farm, they have a little clash. Those are, they are enough to be able to deal with that. But the point is, how are we processing our intelligence? How are we going to understand the patterns and trends of this crisis as they come up? And in doing that, everybody is involved. Because when we say security is everybody's business, we are saying that everybody has a role to play. The community, the critical stakeholders in the community, the artisans, the civil society organizations, all of these people. But the security agencies, I think they are doing their best. But what I'm trying to say, because they are not so properly or well resourced. Therefore, you've got to bring together, because you can't have a police force where you have only 3 officers to be able to respond. But we expect that those officers, when they have this early warning system, they escalate it to the area command, to the state command, and the state command tells the IG, look, this situation is developing. I want to have a proper understanding of it. The DSS plays their part, the civil defense, even the prisons in that area, and even the local government. All of these are involved. If you leave it for the security agencies alone, people that they are not backed by technical support. I mean, how many places do you have CCTV? How many do you have drones? And all of this, because technology is a force multiplier. But we all know, even in the FCT that is supposed to be sophisticated, we don't have a functional CCTV in the city. Therefore, the government will have to support the security agencies, give them technical support in terms of having drones, in terms of tracking mechanism, lawful tracking, when people who are known to be causing all this, you obtain a court order to be able to monitor that these guys are likely to cause problem. So it is a combination of all of this that is going to give you the kind of security that you want. Community engagement. The meetings taking place. Right now, I can tell you the local government system is not giving much support. They hardly have meetings, security meetings at the local government. The state government will most of them have meetings when there is a crisis. And then they just call the security agencies together. So the whole thing, you are going to end insecurity when you begin to hold people accountable. That once there is an early warning, it is passed to you. What did you do with it? How did you respond? If you don't have the capacity, did you escalate it? Did you pass it forward? All these are things that will happen. But the greatest challenge of our security is the lack of collaboration and coordination. Every state government set up.
All right, AIG Wilson Inalegu, thank you very much for the points you have articulated. Of particular interest, just as you were wrapping up your submission this time, had to do with an issue that we discussed on Good Morning Nigeria some weeks ago. And incidentally, Dr. Kabir Adamo, always a guest with us on security matters, was also part of that conversation. And that has to do with security accountability. The various stakeholders, or let's say the security value chain, how do people account for it? If somebody drops the ball in a particular jurisdiction, who takes responsibility for that particular incident? Whether it's police, whether it's DSS, whether it's any of the 20 plus security agencies. And we don't seem to be getting to the point we just re-emphasized again. We'll come back to you in the course of this conversation. Now back to the studios here, distinguished Senator Dickett Plank. Again, we'll focus on Plateau because that's where you are from, and you represent the Central Senatorial District. There was a clear sense in which the immediate past governor of Plateau State, Simon Lalong, invested heavily in peace building. The chief purpose, of course, was to ensure that the blood on the plateau was wiped away. You had, whether a peace commission is in Kaduna, they have a peace commission, but you had this regular peace interactions and so on and so forth. And for a while, I mean, the stories of bloodbath on the plateau seem to have abated. But in your opinion, what has gone wrong again? Is it that those values that he sought to embed did not properly germinate? And in that case, how do we retransplant those values that yielded benefits while he was in office?
Or they were taken for granted.
Yeah, you are quite right. There was this peace building commission that was established by Governor Lalong, and the Director General is a chap from Mangu Local Government Council. And I think that politically we should see government as a continuity. Even if an administration finishes its tenure and another one comes in, we should be able to maximize the purpose of various committees that are on ground. So for me, I feel that Lalong did well by establishing that there was this interreligious committee that was set by Lalong too. I feel that we should be able to maximize those ones. But again, I'm also very happy to hear from Doctor who spoke about the limitation of our traditional rulers. Constitutionally, the powers of our traditional rulers have been drastically reduced. You can imagine a first-class chief is answerable probably to a councillor, and he does not direct. And we're at a level of independence and literacy in our country where you also have NGOs, fundamental right. When the chief says this, which section of the law gives him power to say that? So you discover that our traditional rulers, they are not as powerful as they used to be. We all grew up together. There are little issues that were settled out of police, little issues that were settled out of court, but now somebody will tell you under subsection what is the traditional sitting and punishing a person. So the powers of traditional rulers have been drastically reduced, and he threw it back to us that we are lawmakers. We need to look into such. I accept your challenge. Then another speech was about trust. Yesterday we confirmed service chiefs. We met confirmation of the Minister of Chief of Defense Staff and service chiefs. I spoke. And one of President Tinubu, the appointment of the service chiefs, a lot of people are happy with it. People feel there is ability to drop down and then make an inclusive appointment of service chiefs may bring result. So we believe that it's trust that the president have given to these nominees or appointees. They need to transfer this trust to the people because there are expectations, but we need trust. Let me tell you, the governor is Mogavul and he's coming from Mangu. When he appears, the conflict groups do not see governor in him, but they see Mogavul in him. Whatever steps he takes, they don't see governor, they see Mogavul. Whatever speeches he makes, they don't see governor, they see tribe. And I told you that if we go by identity, it becomes very tough. Let us look at criminality from a point of criminality and trash it at that level. But I ask again, why has it come that our security structure cannot take care of issues that is leading to self-help? When you want to do self-help, it means the system has fallen ever. So for me, self-help is a clear indication that the system, that the people can never be protected. But you know our constitution, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, Section 14, subsection 2, A and B. The primary role of government is the security of the citizenry. But when we are not safe, it's like the system are failed. So I really, our expectations are that even in the approaches, you find out that the police will complain that the type of weapon the criminals have, they don't have. How comes about that the citizens go about with weapons? How? The filtration of weapons is another failure. So for me, sir, I feel, just as rightly said, the criminal justice system must be looked into so that criminality must be investigated and punished. I feel that the issue in Mangu, if it was left for the normal Fulani in Mangu and the normal Morvul people, between the two of them, well, they can settle. But when you have support, it's a Fulani issue, and therefore any other Fulani feels that they are killing my people, you are getting external support. It's no more the normal meeting of the usual brother Fulani that you normally have. You have external support. We need to curtail this. We need to be more nationalistic. It has to be Nigeria before my tribe. It has to be Nigeria before my religion.
so long as criminality is covered by identity, it will be very difficult for us to solve.
All right, distinguished
Yes,
Senator, we thank you. And beyond the issue of, Criminal Justice Act and, of course, repositioning our security architecture, you've identified, and everybody here identified, a fundamental trigger, a very fundamental trigger, the underlying factor that must be addressed, the issue of trust, trust, the issue of identity, ethnic profiling. And I think when we come back, we'll just take a short break. When we come back, we'll begin to look at, again, what are the approaches to begin to build trust such that a Yoruba man will see an Igbo man and say, oh, we are both Nigerian. A Fulani man will see, someone from Plateau and say, okay, we are all one. And I remember, just before we go for a break, gentlemen, I remember, and I've been using this as an example, when we went out, while I was away, out of the country, and we were a group of Nigerians and some brothers and sisters from Africa, and we were walking, and someone saw us and said, oh, hi, greeted us, and we greeted her and said, where are you people from? And the four of us chorused, Nigerians. And we chorused Nigerians. And then we looked at ourselves. There was an Igbo man, my brother Husseini is from the north, I was there. We cheated, nobody said this. So this is the way we should, and when we come back, we'll probably look at what approach we can use, to arrive at that. Please, let's take a break now.
Nigeria means unity.
Nigeria means freedom to me.
Nigeria means greatness to me.
Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible.
As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress.
Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. And it is the woman that does that.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Whether from the winding creeks of Niger Delta, the vastness of northern Savannah, the boardroom of Lagos, the building bustling capital of Abuja, as busy market of Onitsha. You are all the people. As your president, I shall serve you with prejudice towards none, but compassion and amity towards all.
All right, welcome back to the program, and we're looking at the recurring attacks in some of the communities in parts of our country, but of course specifically we have focused more on Mangu local government area in Plateau State, and that's basically because of the recent incident and the magnitude of the attacks. And of course we have the distinguished senator representing that area here with us, and I talked about building trust building a trust balance among all ethnic tribes is such that when we see ourselves, we don't identify ourselves by the tribes we come from, but as Nigerians. I don't know how tough order that will be, but there are approaches. And I'd just like to start again with Dr. Kabiru here, who is a security expert.
Well, trust is something, so I learned this from the Europeans. They say trust is good, but control is better. So we can't leave trust, at the mercy of the various stakeholders, as it were. There has to be a control mechanism that ensures that element that Kingsley spoke about earlier, accountability. No matter how we stay here, and NTA is the largest network in Africa, like you say, we can speak here from today till tomorrow. That trust will not be built. It has to be earned. How do we earn that trust? It's a stakeholder multi approach, starting from our influence platforms, the media. Over time, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, we haven't been able to disaggregate our security challenges. We use words that unfortunately add to the problem. I have had cause to take up certain media platforms because of the typology they've given certain threat elements. When you associate a certain criminal activity with an ethnic group or an identity, you are not helping the problem, you're actually adding to it. And it's media platforms that start that. So our influence makers, the media, religious institutions, schools, educational institutions, and then in today's world, social media influencers. And I think there's a few others. We need to identify that, and there has to be a strategic approach by the government to how do they bring these influence makers together to understand the relevance. Rwanda happened. How did Rwanda happen? We can speak about the genocide in Rwanda. Religious institutions were involved, media platforms were involved, influence makers within society. So we shouldn't wait until that happens to us here. So that's number one. Number two is the security agencies. I mentioned earlier on that trust is earned. If you look back at President Buhari's administration, he inherited a system where the budgetary provision for security was about 900 billion yearly. By the time he left this year, the provision for security is about 2.3 trillion. So he has increased it manyfold. But what have we seen in terms of the effect of security within the nation? I told you I maintain a database. Over the 10 years, we added 2 years to the Buhari administration, 78,000 Nigerians have been killed. So if you divide that by 10, it means every year about 7,800 Nigerians are being killed. Now, using that basis, there is no way to score security performance as being successful. It's as simple as that. Now, again, I want to emphasize, I'm not castigating anyone. These are facts. And it's something that I urge strongly for the National Assembly, under their oversight function, to have that kind of capacity and capability. Whenever they are engaging with the security forces, don't just listen to them. Present to them your own side. This is what we are seeing. You've asked for money. We've given you money. Yeah. Why are you not meeting this? So that's number two, when I say trust must be earned. How do we reduce that 7,800 to probably 1,000? If we do that, then the communities will start trusting us. Yeah. Because they can see in a very visible manner outcomes. Then, of course, number three is the role that the communities themselves must play. Earlier on, I spoke about social cohesion. And thankfully, we have an agency here in Nigeria, API, I think African Polling Institute, that keeps an index of our social cohesion. Every year, they release a report. And if I'm right, the last one suggested that we're about 40%, which is below the global standard. So we do have a problem in that area. And they've provided several recommendations on how we can address this social cohesion issue. Point I'm trying to make is security, national security, is not what it used to be. Praying and hoping. Thank God the senator is here. They have a role to play. But more importantly, especially the Office of the National Security Advisor. Almost everything I've said here is encapsulated in our revised strategy, which by the way is almost due for revision. It was launched in 2019, and I think the idea is every 5 years we have to review it. So we need to look at security from that prism, and the distinguished senator, the National Assembly has a role to play. The good thing, I think only one person within the leadership of the various committees that would head security has been appointed. The others are yet to be appointed. I'm hoping, I've monitored the what do you call it, before the inauguration, when you did a session where senators, the new ones, were coming in. Again, I don't want to speak too much. The attrition rate within the National Assembly is worrisome. Over 75% of the membership of National Assembly are new. So capacity building is essential. The staffers within the National Assembly, and because security has changed, national security, it is suicidal to assume that when you appoint somebody to head a committee in the National Assembly, he has the capacity. You have to give him that capacity. So point I'm making, and allow me to offer, pro bono, I will be happy to engage with, whenever this membership are named, to engage with them, and some of what we've said, to transfer it to them. It's self-help, because I'm a Nigerian, my family is here.
Please, I hope you are taking note of that. Pro bono, he's offered, he's made offer.
Well, that message will, of course, go to
the chairman of the National Assembly.
No, it's the Senate President and the Deputy Senate, the principal officers of the Senate, and we also hope of the House of Reps. Thanks a lot. I remember you mentioned this point some time ago, but sometimes when our concerns are different, then you don't gain traction. Rwanda, you mentioned 2019, which was the 25th anniversary of the Rwanda genocide. We had a conversation here on Good Morning Nigeria, and the Charge d'Affaires was one of our guests. And when they told us how it all started and what happened and what they've done, anyone who watched that would have been touched. But before we go back to Freetown, I just want to ask this question. This is probably psychological and also sociological. Conflict, which is a form of war, war is an ugly business. Ugly business. Lives get lost, properties get destroyed. And why is it that our people these days don't seem to be mindful of the consequences of war, of conflict? You can say conflict. I mean, the war is a higher octane level of conflict. But from what we are seeing, armed militia groups, you cannot look. You cannot be talking about 70-something thousand people who were killed over a 10-year period, or let's say since the beginning of this year, January to up to now, 4,000 human beings killed. That's a warlike situation. Let's be realistic. But why is it that people say in Mangu now to say, look, okay, you killed my person, I'm also going to face yours? We don't seem. What is happening that we don't seem to factor this in? That's to say, the leaders and those who sponsor them, those who egg them on.
Our value system, it has collapsed, and we need to accept that. Ghana here, our neighbor, realized that, and it wasn't theirs. Is not even as bad as ours, and there is a national effort to revamp the value system. We need to do that. Growing up as a kid, and by the way, I grew up in Jos. If a corpse is mentioned anywhere, believe me, for weeks, nobody in that community will even go near to that route. But today, people will take their phone to go and video and put it on social media. It has become a part of us. People no longer feel that sense of humanity, that this is a life being lost. So we need to start from that. What happened? And again, I want to go back to that social cohesion report by API. It's a well-documented process, globally accepted standard, that with recommendations on how to address that challenge. I would recommend strongly for the government, the three arms of government, to look into that report and see how they can start implementing in a very conscious and strategic effort the revampment of our value system, as well as an improvement in social cohesion. It's not something we can discuss easily here, because there are so many elements to it. It starts from the family unit. Okay,
let's bring in AIJ in Adegun once more, just for if it's still with us. Okay, AIG, I'd just like for you to quickly, if you may, walk us through probably the process, you know, to achieve better collaboration, because earlier on you talked about, you harped on the need for, you know, closer collaboration, not just between security agencies, but also between security agencies and the communities. Can you walk us through the process, you know, to, you know, achieving that?
Well, I did allude to that in my earlier submission, but let me just take it like this. How do the security forces currently operate? You see, in the national security architecture, which I believe is not even properly covered in the 2019 Nigerian National Security Strategy, I think that was not properly, you know, addressed. If I may ask, if you are not having people meet at the local level, at the ward level, to the local government level, and the state level, right now, it is done as anybody choose. The points generated from some of these meetings, where do they end up? Who provides the analysis? Who attends those meetings? And when people don't attend those meetings, what happened to them? So the process of collaboration starts from that basic level of the world, having a small security committee meeting, going to the local government. And what do you have? You have all the security agencies within the local government, within the state attending, and then at the national security level. But right now, what I observe is that it is done, might be when there is an attack and there is a public outcry, hurriedly they call everybody together and they meet and they just discuss. The situation goes away, nobody talks about it. So the process of coordination starts from the basic level, which I've just mentioned. Now, who drives that process? Right now, I don't see anybody drive it. Because if you are the national security advisor, where do you generate? Yes, you get from the DSS, from the NPF, from the military, from the intelligence wing, and all of that. Now, if these people are not holding meetings, what happens to them? When they are planning operation, if you are not having joint training, you put military police on Kaduna Road. What is the process of interface when they are on that assignment? What is the process of interface with the DSS, with the civil defense, and conducting that duty? So that what somebody hears, the other person also get to hear about it. So I think we should put in place a strong mechanism that will bring or more or less compel all the security players as well as the civil populace at the governance level. Take, for example, the National Orientation Agency should even be driving this process from the local level through the advocacy, which I think is a major mandate. They occupy a critical role. So what I think happens now, everybody is seeking vainglory. Oh, this agency did this, that agency did that. I think it should be a security sector thing that security agencies have achieved this. So the process of, and then another thing I want to talk about, the billions or trillions that have been given. When you are giving money to security, it should be result-based. You conduct result-based budgeting. I don't think that is being done because 10 people were kidnapped in the last quarter. Oh, Commissioner of Police, DSI, and all the rest. What can we do to bring down that number? Oh, we need vehicles, we need money. And you give money. Are you providing any assessment? So even a lot of our political class don't really understand the business of security management, even at the governance level. And so the situation that we find, the governor calls a commissioner or whatever, I'm giving you 5 million for this month and all that. It is not tied to anything. because they don't really even understand. They are not cooperating. Everybody comes to brief you independently, and you are happy. Your SA is not properly schooled in putting in place mechanism for even processing or assessing those intelligence that is brought. And so everybody is working in silos. And yeah, you are going to continue to have, this problem. Nigeria.
AIG in Alego, we're on the home stretch of today's conversation and indeed to this program. One point that I think that we'll probably have time to return to sometime in the future is, I just want to throw this in without necessarily a comment, but if you can proceed your comment, that will be fine. Why is it that security agencies now have to, as it were, wait for orders when offenses are being committed in their view? In their view, I mean, where anyone who studied criminal procedure would know that under the CPA, that's the Criminal Procedure Act, or CPA, Criminal Procedure Law, if an offense is being committed in the view, that is to say, in the presence of a law enforcement officer, you don't need a warrant. You act. But it appears that, I mean, you see 50 communities raised. 50. And people are just going with fire and then just touching these communities. And the senator said people have assault rifles and they are moving all over the place. And you're asking yourself, do we still have a Firearms Act that prohibits prohibition of certain kinds of weapons by certain persons unless otherwise licensed? And if these offenses are being committed, like somebody was telling us, we were discussing this, Claire, you and I were on set 2 days ago, when we were talking about the vandalism of public infrastructure. Precisely. That sometimes you see some of these criminal elements. There was one video that we played back of a person who obviously was taking off the manhole covers here in the Federal Capital Territory. That sometimes you see law enforcement agents who just look away and say, let the person go. Why do we have this attitude among our law enforcement agents? If you can, but otherwise, subject matter for another day.
AIG, just respond in if you can, 60 seconds, please.
The area of competence and professionalism. And I think the political class should allow the security agencies to do their work. A situation whereby the governor has to say, this is the person I want to be the commissioner of police in my state. Allow the inspector general of police, make recommendation to the police service commission. Don't interfere in the way the security agencies are being run. I don't have to have a godfather as a governor to be appointed a commissioner of police. I didn't have that. But the situation where you have that the governor must say, oh, I don't want Wilson, and without any consideration, Wilson is pulled out, you're not going to have the best. So the security is, you don't need anybody's permission when an offense is being committed in your view. I'm happy you quoted it very correctly. That is what is stated in the law. But when you don't hold officers accountable, when you go and bring somebody that you think this is the one you can manipulate to be the head of security, you sacrifice the overall interest of your populace, of your citizens, and only to get somebody that you think you are able to, you can control, you are going to get the best. So let the governors and other people heads should be able to get people who are competent. Number one, let people who serve as ADCs or orderlies and all the rest, they shouldn't graduate from orderly to ADC, from ADCs to chief security officer. You spend 10 years in the government house and you then come back to mainstream policing. That's not going to work. So why am I driving all this point? The political class must allow the practitioners of security, the security agencies, do their work without undue interference. And then you are going to get the best. So if an officer wants somebody to tell him, you see somebody with a gun, you need somebody permission to arrest, maybe the vigilante or whatever of one group, and you know that is the man who brought you there. If you arrest, it's, oh, you have been hired by one political party. That's the problem. So unless we are able to see security as a serious thing, that you allow those who manage these guys, who know their level of competence, manage them properly. You are going to get the best.
All right, Assistant Inspector General of Police retired Wilson in Naligo. Thank you. You've actually taken up the time I would have allotted to the distinguished senator, but he has enough in his hands. He has a responsibility given to him by Dr. Kabiru Adamu. He also has an offer, coming from Dr. Kabiru Adamu. So you have enough to take back to the National Assembly, as part of the approaches to, resolving this incessant communal clashes. Thank you very much, AIG Wilson Inadeko. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, Security Risk Management Expert, always a pleasure to have you. And all the suggestions that you give to us. You've also given us a challenge. The media space also should play its own part.
Yesterday was my birthday, so that's my birthday wish to you. The media.
You didn't tell us.
Well,
you didn't tell us. All right. Please, let's also join our wishes to, congratulate Dr. Kabiru Adamu.
Thank you.
I don't want to ask.
Congratulations. Thank you.
I don't want to ask how old you are. But the gray speaks volume.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. And distinguished Senator Dickett Plang, Senator representing Plateau Central Senatorial District, we'd like to thank you very much. And we pray for peace, not just in Mangu, but in all communities affected by the crisis.
Amen.
All right. And
all right, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria for today. It's been very interesting, although this conversation on a very sad topic. Join us again on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, enjoy your weekend and look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. The fight against rape and rapists is on. Join us and become a star. Have yourselves a very pleasant weekend from all of us here in the GMN crew. Bye-bye.
Latest entrant, latest technology. Welcome to Entel 4G LTE Advanced and experience super fast internet access today. Visit entel.com.ng or any of our stores in Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt to get started.